Hello, welcome to Staring at the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach, and I don't know what happened last night, but there's blood all over my hands while I fix this. My co-host, Matt Brandenburg.
Oh, this is going to be the 1 week where I can't think of something. Werewolves!
Unfortunately, Vitlaman Mist never came back from the woods.
That's
right. So it's just Matt and myself tonight, and we're going to be discussing the new Alma Katsu short story, The Wehrwolf.
Yeah. Which sort of feels like it came out of nowhere. Like,
I saw blurbs for it like at the beginning of last month. Like I saw Christopher Golden posted about it, and then Bracken posted about it.
Okay.
So I heard about it last month. That was the first time it came across. Like,
yeah. Well, and is this part of like an Amazon series? Like, not that this is a part of it. Like, is this like an Amazon thing?
It is an Amazon thing. It looks like.
Okay.
It looks like Amazon's going to be doing some horror stories, I guess, for Halloween.
Okay. Yeah. Who did that? What, there was like 2 years where there was somebody, was that Tor that was kind of doing these like shorts, either audio or book?
Oh no, that was Amazon.
Was that Amazon? Okay. So maybe it's happening again, but they're really quiet because it's Amazon.
And this is published by Amazon Original Stories.
So yeah, they're just doing their thing because they're Amazon.
Yep. But I will say, pick this up. It's on Kindle Unlimited, or it's $1.99.
Yeah.
And it is I thought it was a really fun werewolf story. It doesn't do much for the werewolf genre, but if you just want a classic werewolf story, I think this is a good place to go to.
Yeah, it's funny because it's called and it is sort of short, but like, you know, it's also, when you look on your Kindle, it says like it's about an hour read, so that's not terrible.
It's like a novella kind of like
yeah.
So,
you know,
but
so
it's a short story.
Yeah, sort of easy read for your Halloween start. I mean, right now we're recording, it's literally October 1st, so we're like in the beginning of spooky season. So why not read a cool werewolf story that also happens to have Nazis in it?
And this maybe a commentary on fascism and how fascism affects you.
Yeah. yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Before we dive into the deeper discussion of Werewolf, though, I'd like to kind of give a weekly recommendation. Yes. And last Saturday, I finished Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, which just came on hardcover. And it is a fantastic post-apocalyptic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story.
And this is Eastman wrote it, right? Kevin Eastman wrote this.
Oh, Eastman and Laird, they got back together.
Oh, look at that! So
this is their first time running a comic together since the 80s.
That's insane.
And it feels like a whole love letter to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's flashback scenes in the book that are drawn in the old comic style from the 80s.
Oh, that makes me happy.
So like literally it feels like the team's back together. It's a big love letter to the Turtles. It's a love letter to the comics themselves. And it's a pretty brutal post-apocalyptic story at points. Like, all the Turtles are dead but one.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, that's at the beginning.
Wow.
That's Last Ronin, dude.
I guess that, yep, okay, fair. It's right there in the title.
All the Turtles are dead but one, and you don't know which one is alive.
Oh.
And he's hearing the voices of his dead brothers in his head, like criticizing him and telling him what to do and stuff like that. Oh. And he also has all the tools and the weapons from his brothers.
Yes.
So you can't tell which one he is until they tell you which one he is.
And when did will that spoil it if I ask when do they tell you? I don't want to know who it is. I just want to know.
The end of issue 1.
Okay.
So you found it pretty early on.
Awesome.
and he goes to Manhattan, which is controlled by the Foot Clan, and is now Shredder's grandson.
Oh.
He decides to finish what he started, what he was training to do, defeat the Foot Clan.
I love this. That sounds amazing.
It made me cry by the end, honestly.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah.
It's very heavy. It's very good. And it just feels like a love letter to the Turtles.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you had mentioned reading it this past week, and so I was looking at it like when I went to the comic book store, and even the single issues seem a little bit bigger than like a normal issue. So I do love that they definitely put some work into this.
They did say they're doing another one called The Last Ronin: The Lost Years.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be just like the individual adventures of the last turtle. I don't want to spoil. I want to. So if our audience reads it, I want them to be surprised. Because I was surprised. It wasn't the one I thought it was.
Oh, interesting. No, I love that. That sounds like such a cool concept. That sounds neat.
It is fantastic. Hopefully the paperback will come out in a few months, but I do highly recommend finding a way to check it out. I do know if you have the Hoopla app, it is available on Hoopla.
Okay, that's good.
So you can read it on the tablet. I also finished. I've been on kind of a comic mode this week. I also finished the. Well, they finally released the Look Back by Tatsuki Fujimoto. Fujimoto is mostly known for Chainsaw Man. That's his big.
Oh, Chainsaw Man!
I love Chainsaw Man. And between Chainsaw Man Act 1 and Act 2, or Part 1 and Part 2, Fujimoto was pretty silent and was just drawing manga. And he was doing lots of short stories and one-shots. And he was trying different like techniques and experimenting on different things probably because he wanted to elevate Chainsaw Man, but also I think he wanted the second part of Chainsaw Man to be a bit less chaotic and a bit more emotional. Okay. And so the stories he was working on were more on the somber, like quieter side. And Look Back is about these two middle school girls who are the complete opposites of each other. One is called Fujino and the other is Kiyomoto. And the idea is it's supposed to be a play on the author's name. And one of the girls makes manga, and it's very crude and very like silly. The illustrations aren't great, but like the kids love them because they're funny. And then someone else begins putting manga on the student newspaper as well, and there's no characters, no dialogue. It's just amazing background illustrations. And the two end up becoming rivals and pushing each other. Nice. But only one of them is like has a severe anxiety disorder and never comes to school. And when our main character graduates school, the principal has her go to this girl's home to deliver her diploma. And then they meet and they become best friends and they end up making manga together. And then tragedy happens and a kind of time loop scenario begins. Ooh. And author mainly thing is Fujimoto kind of showing his love for manga, but also showing the toll that like being a manga artist takes on you.
I like that.
And it's not over the top. It's not super comical. It's more just this really somber, more serious story from him. And in the way Chainsaw Man Part 2 has been going, which, I mean, it has been funny and stupid Chainsaw Man, because that's what Chainsaw Man is.
Yeah.
He's using this to talk a lot more about anxiety and depression. School bullying plays a big theme in this part as well. And it's more kind of like quieter than how loud and bombastic it used to be. So I think like Look Back was kind of him playing with kind of that tone.
So is it like a contained like?
Yeah, it's a contained story.
Okay.
And they're selling it as its own independent like manga because it's like 200 pages, so you can just make like a little book of it.
That's cool. Because that sounds, I like that. That sounds like a good story.
It is a really good story. I'd recommend it, even if you're not a big manga fan. It's just a really, it's a nice story.
Nice.
But also, speaking of, the new Chainsaw Man chapter came out, and that was a fucking doozy. So, like, the best way I can explain Chainsaw Man, it's impossible to explain Chainsaw Man. The best way to explain this arc is the first part's done. Our main character, Denji, who's also Chainsaw Man, he is an orphan and he doesn't understand society. And this part has him going to high school. So it's kind of this outcast kid who doesn't understand how society works going to a popular high school. And everyone thinks he's weird. And he wants people to like him. So he's trying to tell people that he's Chainsaw Man, and nobody believes him. But it's also focusing on a girl named Asa who has severe anxiety and depression issues, and her classmates bully her. And she ends up making a deal with the War Devil when she's about to be killed. And the War Devil is trying to use her to find Chainsaw Man because the War Devil hates Chainsaw Man. So it's kind of setting these two characters like together with each other. But like the last chapter had Denji telling Asa that he's Chainsaw Man, and Asa just goes, "You're a fucking idiot," and walks away.
Oh, nice.
And then like the War Devil's like, he said he was Chainsaw Man. He said he was Chainsaw Man. Asa's like, he's not Chainsaw Man. He's wearing a shirt that says Chainsaw Man, and he says he's Chainsaw Man's biggest friend. He'd be an idiot to say he's Chainsaw Man. It's a really fucking bonkers comic, but like he's making the second part a lot more serious and a bit more laid back than the franticness of the first part. Because like the first part is like you did fucking 5 lines of cocaine in a row, and it's just fucking like that's literally Chainsaw Man Part 1. Chainsaw Man Part 2 is slowed down a lot. And
nice.
My last comic that I read.
Lots of comics.
Well, this is the manga.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I read some of these chapters a while ago, but the book is finally out. And it's volume 1 of Dandadan by Yukinobu Tatsu. This is his first manga.
Nice.
Or his first serialized manga, I should say. But he was the assistant on Chainsaw Man.
Oh, nice.
And this is one of the most bonkers things that I've ever read. It's pretty much which fits the bill for someone who worked on Chainsaw Man. It's about these 2 high school kids. One's a boy, one's a girl, and the girl just gets dumped by her boyfriend, and she's all pissed off. And they're talking, and the boy is like one of those nerdy boys who's super into the occult or super into UFOs. And the girl's grandmother is a fortune teller. So the girl believes in the occult, but not in aliens. So they make a deal with each other. She goes, if you go to this tunnel, there's supposedly a spirit there. If there is a spirit there, it proves that ghosts and devils are real. If there's no spirit there, it proves they're wrong. They're not real. And the kid goes, yeah, well, this building is known for aliens coming. So same deal for you. We'll go to these places and see what happens. And it turns out ghosts and aliens are both real.
Oh, God.
The boy gets an encounter with a yokai called Turbo Granny, which is a real Japanese legend where this spirit of a dead grandmother can run at 100 kilometers per second.
Holy crap!
And per second, like I don't know.
Still,
it's fast, and she just wreaks havoc over the country. But when the boy meets her, she just pops up. And this is the dialogue from the manga. It just goes, I'll let you suckle my teats if you let me gobble your schlong.
Oh, God.
And the kid's response is just, ghost! And he tries to run away. And then he gets possessed by Turbo Granny because she beats him. And then the girl finds aliens who want to impregnate her and harvest her organs
Oh my
because
god.
aliens are only male and they need female like organs.
Oh my god.
But when trying to do this, they awaken spiritual power within her that gives her psionic abilities, and she uses that to fight off the aliens. While also the boy possessed by Turbo Granny rushes the aliens and fights them off too, and the two have to end up teaming together to fight supernatural threats as they learn to control their powers.
Holy crap, that sounds insane.
It is bonkers and it's really fun. And it's more adult than Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man's like PG-13 leaning into R. Dandadan is like hard R. It's like more violent, more vulgar, more graphic. Because Chainsaw Man's audience is mainly teenage boys. Dandadan's kind of going for a little bit older. But the guy, and even reading it, you can tell the guy worked on Chainsaw Man. Like,
yeah.
But it's just funny to see the overlap and how bonkers, but also like in a different way this is. Because I will say Chainsaw Man's bonkers, but it does touch on some really deep themes. Like, because the more you give it time, the more it opens up of what it's actually trying to do.
Yeah.
But it takes a while for Chainsaw Man to do that. And then one last thing is I am about halfway done with Fright Night Origins.
Nice.
Tom Holland.
Yes.
Which is a rewrite of Fright Night, actually.
Oh, is it? Huh.
It's not even a prequel, it's a complete rewrite. It's him writing Fright Night over again.
Okay.
And it's from what I've been told, it's what the original script was closest to.
Huh.
Before he had to change it for studios. And so, like in the book, a lot of it's the same. The plot's very similar, but you're getting a lot more of Jerry.
Okay.
So you're kind of seeing more of the vampire's perspective, how the vampire is doing things and getting by. And you're getting a lot more character depth, especially with Evil Ed as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And this is what? This is
This is in Psychopocalypse.
Psychopocalypse. I am loving more and more what they are doing. So that's awesome.
It's the first in a trilogy.
Oh, wow.
So we're getting 2 original Fright Night books, also from Tom Holland.
That is amazing.
And I'm a big Fright Night fan, so I'm all over this. I love Fright Night so much.
That is great. Yeah, I guess for our listeners, I mean, we've talked about Killer Flies. I know I've brought up Manborg and Wishmaster. They are doing these cool novelizations, and obviously they're working with Tom Holland. There is a podcast that I listen to called Best Movies Never Made. I'm going to draw a complete Josh Miller and Steven Scarlatta. So Josh Miller is the guy who wrote both Sonic the Hedgehog movies, and they've done a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, they look at scripts of stuff that was never made, and they bring on people to either who've been tied to those that like wrote those and or have some sort of tie to that movie that was never made. And the reason I'm bringing this up is probably about 3 or 4 months ago, they had on, and I can't remember the guy's name, but they were talking about Hellraiser. And so they had the guy who wrote with Clive Barker, who wrote, I think, the second one. And this guy had written a script for the third or fourth one. And it's so fascinating what this writer talks about in the process, talks about with writing the Hellraiser stuff. There's a lot of really cool, like if you're a huge Clive Barker fan, this is a great episode to listen to because he goes into really deep dive about early Clive Barker and like how these two met at like a theater troupe and were coming up with these ideas. And then they even talk about, again, if you're a fan of like early splatterpunk, they talk about John Skip and David Shaw and how, because I think John Skip was in one of the Hellraiser movies as just like an extra, but he was in there because he happened to be on set writing articles about it. So they just pulled him in. But it was so fascinating to hear what his concept is. And that script actually they published and Psychopocalypse have published, so I think it's out there, and what the true vision of what the later Hellraiser movies were going to be. So yeah, I guess this is all me just saying that I'm really, even despite our commentary about Killer Flies way back when, what they are doing, and even they fixed Killer Flies, maybe because of us, I don't know. But I love what they are doing, and this working with Tom Holland to write Fright Night stuff sounds amazing.
Yeah, no, like this book's a lot of fun. It's not like the greatest written book ever, but like it is a breezy read and really fun.
Well, and that was like when I was reading like the Manborg novelization. It wasn't doing anything spectacular, but it was just really funny to read a novelization about this movie from the guys who did Psycho Goreman. So it was fun.
And also, I did find my next read once I finish this, and it's gonna be. I picked it up yesterday at work. The cover's been staring at me for like 3 months. It's called The Helm of Midnight. And I'm just going to read the back because this fucking sounds awesome. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hannibal meets Mistborn in Mario Lostetter's The Helm of Midnight, the dark and stunning first novel in a new trilogy that combines the intricate world building and rigorous magic system of the best of epic fantasy with a dark and chilling thriller. In a daring and deadly heist, thieves have made away with an artifact of terrible power, the death mask of Louis Charborn. Made by a master craftsman, it is imbued with the spirit of a monster from history, a serial murderer who terrorized the city. Now Charborn is loose once more, killing from beyond the grave, but these murders are different from before, not simply random, but the work of a deliberate mind-probing for answers to a sinister question. Corona Hervath and her fellow regulators must enter the mind of madness to stop the insatiable killer while facing the terrible truths left in his wake.
Holy crap. That sounds amazing. Who's the author?
The author is Marina Lostetter. This is her debut novel.
Dang, this sounds great.
So I'm excited to give this a read because like it just combines everything I love in like one book.
Yeah, and that it's funny because maybe you can answer, or our listeners can answer this question, because I feel like I haven't seen enough books that delve into fantasy horror like that. I've seen plenty of future and space novels and or movies that deal with that kind of like serial killer and space kind of concept, but like personally, I don't think I've seen too many serial killer slasher, not that this is a slasher, but a Hannibal type story set in that time. I mean, I guess you can look at some classics, but like I feel like that's a huge area to delve that I haven't seen personally yet.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of, I don't know, it's an interesting concept, and I'm surprised it hasn't been done sooner. I can think of a couple other fantasy books that blend some horror elements, but I hear this one leans more into horror than like a lot of others do.
That's amazing.
So I'm excited to give it a read. But besides that, I want to save one thing for the very end before we go in. But Matt, what about you?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I defended it last week. The week before, I feel like I sort of defended it off air. But finally, the Munsters. I finally watched it yesterday, and it is amazing. I loved every second of this movie. It's camp up to a million. It is so campy. Everybody is giving it 110% and just being so over the top, but like on purpose. I read an amazing article, I think in Variety. It's a little short article, but I read it with talking to Rob Zombie, and that was one of the things he said when he saw everybody in their costumes and their makeup. He was like, "This is a living cartoon." So make it a living cartoon. Give me everything. And they all do. And it's just funny. It's goofy. It's a silly little story. I mean, this isn't going to break any new ground story-wise, but visually, it's what I think we've been missing for so long, because everything is practical in here except when he does like a really over-the-top cheesy green screen, which is very obviously supposed to be a cheesy over-the-top green screen. So like that it's even funny, but just all the set pieces are his style 100%. He's got such a cool visual image taking from old movies and 60s and 70s movies, and he just puts that all in there with his flair. It's again, from this article, he didn't 100% aim for kids, but it's PG. It's his PG movie, so it's definitely a kid focused thing. But like that, those set pieces, I think, like help with kids. But there's also just enough of his artistic style of like certain costumes. You can just, you've seen him possibly do these before. There's like a robot priest that is straight out of like a 60s movie of this giant blocky like tin can robot. And it's perfect because we're, especially in this day and age, we're so used to seeing these sleek humanoid, robots made out of like nanobots, and they're all like very sleek, and he goes the exact opposite and does this amazing giant blocky robot that walks slow and lets off steam and all this stuff, and it's just priceless. And like there's a scene during Halloween, and so he definitely throws in his like artistic endeavors with the costumes. They're all very his style, with bulgy eyes and just really detailed face rubber masks and everything, and it's just, that's perfect. There's a scene where Herman and Lily are hanging out with the creature from the Black Lagoon. And it's so crazy and it's just silly. They're watching the movie Creature from the Black Lagoon with the creature, and so it's just this hilarious, like, silly thing. He again in this article, I think off air when we were with Sean, we were talking about or even last week, I think we were talking about the colors versus black and white. Well, according to him, that was a universal choice. So he said, well, fine, if I can't do black and white, I'm going to go hyper realistic. And it works. it looks like a living cartoon. I think it's great for, a younger audience to kind of see this over the top spectacle. We don't have too many of those now. A lot of them are very grounded in reality, and this is the opposite of reality. So like, I had a blast. It totally, if I wasn't in the mood for Halloween already, I'm definitely after seeing this just because of everything. It's sort of a prequel to the show, so it's about their courtship, and there's just like a little challenge between them making certain decisions in the movie. So like, just to kind of help set you up to why they're in Hollywood, and so you're not gonna be in any, like, he's not doing anything other than just putting in a bunch of visual gags and cheesy jokes. But I loved it, and I want to see him do more of this style. So I definitely recommend the Munsters. Don't go in expecting anything other than just having fun with it. So.
It sounds like it could go either way, honestly. It just depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that, what's funny is almost every post I've seen online so far has been, I know I'm not supposed to like this, but I loved it. And so like, I'm all for it. I knew I was going to like it from the beginning. So like but yeah, I think it depends on what you want. Like it's Rob Zombie without all the fucks and rednecks and super gory violence. It's just him saying, hey, I loved all these old movies, I'm gonna make my own version of this kind of over the top goofy kids movie. So I think it depends, but like, just go in expecting to have fun and you'll have fun.
Yeah,
My only complaint is it's a hair too long. I think they could have tightened some stuff up. I think I know where he was going with some of these, like some of the cuts. He doesn't cut the camera, or he doesn't cut. Lets it linger for a little longer, and you're kind of like, all right, I get it. But that would be my only complaint. It's just under 2 hours, which might seem a bit too long for some people. So it was fun. I would go in low expectations, have a blast. That's my defending of the Munsters. The only other thing I can talk about real quick is I'm almost done with Pat Lacey's Bonesaw, which came out a couple years ago, and this is yeah. Yeah, you gotta do some Macho Man, R.I.P. But this one's another fun one. It's like just a love letter to slashers. Apparently, I've been reading a lot of those, or a lot of those have been secretly coming out in the last couple of years. Having read My Heart is a Chainsaw, that one's a little bit more in depth. This one's a little bit more of, hey, we got this trauma-like producer that's making these movies about a giant pig monster called Pigfoot, and he comes to this beach town, and they're going to wreak a lot of havoc. So it's a lot of fun. It's another good one that I think would get you into the Halloween spirit, especially if you like watching slashers during this month. It's a good one. And yeah, so that's been my main consumption this week.
Well, I have one more, which is I watched the Jeffrey Dahmer show, Netflix.
This has been such an interesting thing to follow, like the outside of people watching it. So what did you think of it?
I think it was a good show, but it ultimately, like most true crime, feels exploitative of the victims.
Yeah, that's a lot
and
of
I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Especially when like they recreated like the courtroom like stuff with one of the victim sisters having a courtroom meltdown.
Yeah.
That word for word in the series played by an actress, and like they don't even bother like reaching out to the families or offering financial compensation.
Really? They didn't?
No, they didn't. They just dropped it.
Jeez.
And the families, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So like I think it was handled very irresponsibly, especially for a show that is essentially trying to tell the victim stories over Dahmer's story.
Yeah.
The first few episodes focus on Dahmer, and Evan Peters does a really great job as Jeffrey Dahmer. Like I'm sure he needed therapy after this role.
Right.
Richard Jenkins is hilarious as his father, though. Because like it's just like this increasingly level of just like how much more can my son fuck up. The show also makes an effort to point out that Jeffrey Dahmer was a fuck up in every single thing. Like he was legit drunk 90% of the time.
Jeez.
He fucked up his entire life, and like the only reason why he was getting away with his crimes, and the show even like highlights this, is because the police never came to the neighborhood. And if they did come to the neighborhood, they would dismiss all the concerns the black residents would say to them. And they'd give Jeffrey Dahmer the benefit of the doubt because he's a white guy.
Jeez.
And the show like really puts emphasis that the police did not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And why Jeffrey got away with his murders for so long. And like there's a lot of episodes, like one episode follows a character, well, I should say character, follows a man named Tony, who was one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. And Tony was a deaf gay black man. And the episode just shows us his life and like his dreams, him getting this job that he really wants, him accomplishing like everything in life. And then he meets up with Jeffrey at a club. And then eventually you just see Jeffrey's apartment door close, and it cuts to his neighbor, and you just hear power tools going off.
Jeez.
And it's just like, ooh, like that episode hit really well, and it was really well done. And it really puts you into the perspective of like, this person was a fucking monster, but he got away with it because the society he lived in didn't care about the lives of these people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good message to take away from in the Jeffrey Dahmer story. I just wish it didn't. I just wish they worked more with the families of the victims, and they
Yeah.
like didn't exploit their trauma for money.
Yeah.
Because the lives Jeffrey Dahmer took, they can't be replaced. And like, this isn't entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll say the show's good. If you like Ryan Murphy stuff, I'd say watch it. Just know that they kind of fucked over the victims in real life. But that being said, it's a good TV show.
All right. Well, that's
Really
good to
solid
hear.
performances.
Yeah.
And like Evan Peters again, man, he was as Jeffrey Dahmer. He was something else. Let's move over and be introduced to the German Wolves.
Yeah.
Wehrwolf by Alma Katsu. And
Yeah.
I thought it was a really fun werewolf story.
I did too. I enjoyed it. It's, I think we even said at the beginning, or you said, it doesn't do anything new with a werewolf, but it does something really interesting. It kind of in the broader story of a werewolf and what
Yes.
that means. So,
And I feel the commentary she's putting in the story is very relevant to what's happening like today.
yeah, it's yeah, and I think it's really interesting, and she talks about it at the end. She did like her little afterword, and how I think I knew this, but I guess I didn't. She was what in criminology? I guess I could look it up, but she was in forensics and stuff, or she studied. I should
She
look it
was
up.
working in
Did she work for the FBI?
not the FBI. She works for some like military science company.
I can
I
look.
think.
It's funny that we're we're like, we have the book in front of us. Yeah, so she worked for several U.S. agencies according to her book.
She worked for a senior policy analyst for the Rand Corporation.
Yes, and it says that she worked on genocides and mass atrocities, and so they studied a lot of this to figure out how it happened. So anyway, all that to being said, to the first like half of the short novella, it kind of shows that, and it's interesting in how she shows this, and she does it in a really cool way. So our UA, our main character, so we're in Germany, 1940. This is like the close to the end of World War II. This small village in the middle of the woods, and they've been listening to news broadcasts, and they know the Allies are coming, and they know what's happening, that this is done. And of course it's German broadcasting, so a lot of them are talking about how evil the Allies are and what they're going to do when they find us and when they're coming into our country. So you kind of have this buildup of the coming from of the U.S. and Europe, and all the allies coming in are you have this buildup of them being evil, and they're gonna kill all of the Germans, and they're gonna just put them on prison camps and all this stuff. So you kind of have this buildup of these nerves in this village. It's mostly older people who couldn't go and fight into the war. So so you have them. Half of them are like, I don't believe this. Like, the Allies are going to be good. This is going to be a good thing. We're done with what we did. We knew, like, some of the groups are like, I'm just ready. They've been lying to us too long. The Nazi party is not great. And then you have a smaller contingent of people who we get into more later are like, no, the Allies are going to be evil. Like, they totally buy into this. So you have these two sides, and the UAR farmer and family, he what I loved is that she puts him kind of in the middle. He is agreeing that everything that they've been doing is wrong, but he also feels such love for his country and a love for his people that don't I don't know where to go. And what she's doing is showing this divide, and then how it can get manipulated by a smaller group of these people who are like, no, the allies are bad. We need to protect our own. We're going to go out and start this militia to help protect our group. And you don't love your country. You don't love your family because you don't want to protect them. And so he finally I think, considering what Alma is saying for the present, it's an interesting thing to kind of show like these people do like they think on both sides. It just depends on who's giving the voice and where they're like where they are feeling and who can manipulate them to make them work onto the evil side or accept that the allies are going to be good. So I think just right from the start, that first half is such an interesting look at how you can turn somebody, or how somebody can slowly turn, because that's sort of what he does, and then he kind of loves it. But like that first half, you're kind of like, oh, he's not going to do it. He's not going to join this group. But then you kind of see him and he's like, oh, well, he doesn't agree with what's happening, but he also wants to protect his people. And so like,
Yeah.
I think that I love besides all the werewolf stuff, just that concept of like how you can get somebody to kind of go to an extreme route.
Well, it kind of shows, and like this is something people talk about in political science, but like if you are someone who's in the middle, that almost always ends up helping the side that's on the right.
Yeah.
Because the people in the middle like the status quo, and he's like the status quo. And when push comes to shove, he's going to do what he can to preserve the status quo, which often means going to the right.
Yeah. And right as in capital R.
Yeah, right as in capital R. Like this is and this one, like the Jaegers or the hunters, the werewolves, right? They're pretty much fascists. Like there's just a metaphor for complete nationalist.
Yeah.
And how that ends up becoming more than just loving your country.
Yeah.
And it dives a lot into, and then even our character, we see like there's bits where he regrets his decisions, and then there's bits where he doesn't regret his decision.
Yeah.
And we see his conflict as the story goes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that's an interesting point, because even when they get to this wolf point, that he loves that freedom and that nature-esque of being a wolf, but he's never 100% on board to the killing part of it, even though he does eventually kind of like get in there to do wolf things of eating bodies and blood and stuff. But like, it's exactly what you said. He's still like conflicted. He's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do the murder part, but I'm totally fine with being a wolf and like terrorizing the Russians and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. The other thing I really liked too is the small splinter group is led by somebody named Hans, who was in the military, was in the Nazi military, and came back. And like it's you kind of get these different viewpoints until you get to the end, and you sort of already kind of have a guess, just because we know where this story is going, and we've seen people like this before, where they're very full, love the country, but like they just couldn't cut it in the military. So like he's saying, oh, I'm back for, like my unit was disbanded and I'm back because of that. And then he also tells people, oh, I'm part of a special splinter group that, like these special commandos, the special forces unit called the Wehrwolves. So like he's telling you all that stuff, but then by the time we get to the end, you realize like, oh no, he's just a coward and ran back. but all that being said is that he's such like this bully to force people to do what he wants and fight the splinter group of like, militia extremist person. And I'm guessing, and it seems very accurate just from what we've seen in real life. A lot of those people are too cowardly to actually join in to, say, the military, but they're not too cowardly enough to say, hey, we're going to storm our capital and battle and fight for our rights. But, like when it comes down to it, they need that group, that pack to be with them.
And they need people that they can control. If they don't have control of the situation, they do what they can to leave that situation.
Exactly. So so there's a lot of that, I guess, listeners, if you haven't read this yet. A lot, like, all that stuff is sprinkled in with this interesting fairy tale look at, like, the German werewolf and what that history is, and what the history of, like, grim fairy tales and just these deep dark woods in Germany, and the secrets that hide in there and everything like that. And so, like, she blends the two stuff in there really well, so it's not so preachy that you're like, okay, it's all just preachy stuff. There's also this, like, kind of fairy tale element going all the way through, which took me a little bit, like, I kind of assumed she was doing a fairy tale thing, but then once you kind of get to the end there, then you're like, okay, this is total fairy tale territory.
One thing I also really like about the story is the amount of, like, research how to go into this too.
Yeah.
Going into the Grimm's fairy tales, going into even, like, German history. And it's an interesting look at the idea of, like, the good German.
Yeah.
Or, like, it's interesting to look at, like, the moderate, the middle person.
Exactly. It's there's it's a very conflicted and interesting kind of history there. It's very interesting when you talk to some of the older Germans and, like, what happened in that time. I also appreciate it because it's true. The touch, she kind of touches a little bit on Russia, where, like, the Allies, of course, coming on, the people in Germany, of course, they're gonna be scared that the Allies are coming, and they have a little bit of hints at Russia, but, like, knowing the history of what Russia did and does, I like that she kind of put that in there and showed, like, oh, there's this giant country that's coming to take over the world, and they were just hiding behind like hiding in the winds until some things happened. And I thought it's an interesting kind of, like, look and twist. I liked that she put it in Germany, and she put it in this smaller village that could, one, be manipulated by Hans and the werewolves, but also their viewpoint of, like, this kind of, like, isolated community where they can only listen to the broadcasts. They're not, that's the only place they're getting the news, and, like, they're not getting any food, they're not getting any help from the German government and everything like that. So it's just, it was like a perfect little spot to kind of, like you said, that moderate German / isolated community that is sort of part of the war, but not really, because they're all just people who couldn't get into the war. I think that was just like a good little boiling pot for what this story is telling us.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too, like, is to go back to the fairy tale stuff, is besides the radio and, like, the talk of World War II, this could feel like it's based in the 1500s and stuff like that, because there's no because, again, it's so isolated, and, like, they have this story about this Jaeger that was this famous hunter, went down in generations and, like, hiding in the woods, and our farmer UA has to, like, go out to collect wood, and they hide their like livestock in there. So it's not like even though obviously 1940s isn't modern compared to today, but it's not even a 1940s modern. It seems like you don't hear anything about, say, cars or televisions or anything other than a radio and then this isolated little middle Earth community.
Totally. And so, I kind of want to go into spoilers if you're ready to do the spoiler bit.
Yeah, I think so. I guess for people who don't want to hear spoilers, it's a werewolf story. It's a World War II story. It's, like you said, $1.99 on Amazon, or it's free through Kindle Unlimited. It's like an hour read. You'll love it. It's good. So get it.
Fantastic. I loved how when the werewolves got tired of hunting animals, they just turned to the people in the town.
Yeah, I thought that was such a interesting thing, especially like they kind of get sold, or UA gets sold as, well, we're going to protect the community from the Allies and the Russians. And they find so they do that, but then there's like days of them not turning into werewolves, and then that's when they're like, all right, well, let's just go on patrol. And
then
I think
they just start eating animals, and then that turns into the people they don't like in the town.
Yes, I thought that, which was like so perfect of what she was trying to do, because it turned into that like, well, that person disagreed with me, so let's go kill them. And like
for Ue's like, I never signed up for this. Like,
yeah,
this isn't what I signed up for. But at that point, he's kind of in it too deep.
Yes, I thought that was great. And just like, again, that kind of turn, because I think they even sell it first as, we're going to go after the people that might tell on us. And then we're going to go, then it's like, well, then we're going to go after that person because they disagreed with me or they called me out. And so like, which is again, just that like perfect look at, okay, well, here's what a militia and extremist group is going to do. They're going to go after people who say things that we disagree with. And it's like, makes you wonder. I also like the werewolf concept in this. I really liked regarding the belt.
Yeah, how the belt has to be worn to transform.
Yes. And then they all transform.
It controls their power.
Yes. So I thought
I love Katsu's reaction to finding out like he was werewolf as well.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was great because he just like comes home with blood on his hands. He's like, oh, yeah, about that. Yeah, no, I love that. And just that, like, it's such like a smart little device, because you have the belt that they all have to, the one person puts on, and then they all turn into werewolves. And then when he takes it off, they don't become werewolves. And so, because you're sitting there through this whole thing, especially when UA we get to the huge event that happens at the end. Again, fairy tale, again, spoilers. UA disagrees with Hans and the group. So, of course, they do something because he disagrees with them. And so that you're like, well, crap, if he grabs the belt and he puts it on, they're all going to be werewolves and they're going to know he's got the belt. So you're like, how is he going to make this work? And it's such like a smart way to kind of get us into that crazy suspense.
Totally. Oh,
go on.
I was gonna say, I love when he also gets captured by the Allies too.
Yes.
He's telling the story, and he's like, "They're all gonna laugh at me," and nobody laughs.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that I like that, and I also like that the ending too, which is she does this thing, because you're kind of thinking throughout the story, we kind of get this idea of these werewolves being the secret weapon of the Nazi party. Like, they're going to use this because when they're werewolves, they can't be killed. And so you kind of have this set up, and that, like, at least for me, when he's with the Allies and he's with the Americans and he's describing what it is and he's like, oh, I'm gonna put it on, but if I put it on, you're not gonna be able to kill them. So like, there's a whole thing, and she's like, oh well, of course the Americans are gonna be like, no, we need this. We're gonna use this.
Yeah.
So like I like that because you were kind of trying to like I kept trying to figure out how this would end and like where it would go, and it went in a really good way that I think is exactly the way it should be and the way it should have ended. So that was nice. I like the werewolves in this are just big wolves.
Yeah, they're big wolves and they behave like dogs and they are very vicious.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. That was like a good way because most movie werewolves are more humanoid.
Yeah.
But this one, she's just like, no, they're just giant wolves, and like the person is sort of in there, but he's not fully controlling what's happening because like
the werewolves control what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of it, which tied in. And if there was one thing, like, if I don't think this would need to be expanded, but I did like when Yue was human after being turned, like he started getting to the point of, well, I liked being a wolf and I want to be a wolf.
Yeah, he missed being a wolf.
Yeah, and I thought that like is an interesting area. Like obviously what she was going for is what we've described, but like that was something that felt just a hair introduced but then never expanded upon. Again, I don't know if this needed to be expanded.
I think mostly the point what she was trying to say is how easy it is to fall into extremism.
Yeah. And so like I think that worked.
Yeah, no, I mean it was pretty brutal at points. It's a really good story.
Yeah, I think it did a good job with the brutal stuff, but then like that was kind of like that wasn't the focus, but it was in there enough to be like, okay, these wolves are not good.
Yeah, no, Alma Katsu's like I didn't read more of her stuff, but I've read The Hunger, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, I think I might have read some short stories, but I think I need to read more.
I have her spy novel that's on my to read pile.
Nice.
But no, like I genuinely think she's a really great writer, and this story, like, it doesn't do anything new for the werewolf subgenre, and I think some readers might be disappointed in that. I know one reader who was actually.
I think I read that review too. I know. I was like, oh, come on.
Well, we also know Mike's taste, and that kind of fits in for what Mike kind of looks for and stuff.
Yeah. Like exactly. You're not reading this for full werewolf story. So
you're reading this more for like the metaphor that's happening in the story.
Yeah, because I mean, like the werewolf has been done, so might as well take it into different concepts.
Exactly. And again, I thought this was done really well.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Like if you just want an over the top werewolf Nazi story, watch that. What was that one Creep Show episode where they did that?
Oh, the one with Kid Cudi?
Yeah.
I forget the name of that episode. I just remember Kid Cudi was in it.
Yeah, so that's a good one. That is just werewolf violence with no story. So watch that.
Yeah, I agree. And then next week's going to be fun too because we have Gwendolyn Kais coming on.
Yes.
Finally.
Reluctant Immortals. Which
is a really great book.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear thoughts because I had fun with it. So it was a good it was a fun look and at what she did. And well, we can talk about that next week because I was gonna say this was like another funny like twist of fate because I feel like we've talked about one of her stories and we said, hey, it'd be really cool if she did X, and then she did. So like
definitely. And Matt, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, I am on Twitter at BrandenburgDM, and tell me how much you love the Munsters.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088. You can tell me how much you hate the Munsters. And you can follow our podcast, Add Into Staring. This is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.